exactly as you said, the kind of concern that you have, that, you know, you say whether your email address, your email information could be accessed because your daughter has a TikTok account, and that kind of thing has to be talked, you know, has to be discussed. And right now we're not seeing that kind of issues, that kind of atmosphere. So, Mr. Luo, what is your reaction to the kind of concern that people's personal information could really be, you know, accessed by the Chinese government? And there are these kind of talks all the time, Mr. Luo.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to achieve that. I mean, just the Chinese government can easily get access to those kind of the data. Firstly, and just this data is actually now in the U.S., not in the China. So I don't know, and it's really hard to imagine how the Chinese regulators or the government or any Chinese powers will just order no matter ByteDance or others just to share this kind of the data or to the Chinese government. I think no, these kind of the laws can support this kind of the orders or these kind of decisions in the first place. And second,
because physically these data are stored in the United States, right?
Yeah.
But it seems that you know, this kind of discussion is not bought by our American counterparts. They somehow think that so long as a company has Chinese in their blood or is Chinese in their blood, then there's got to be something. Mr. O'Hanlon, that's the impression we're getting here.
Well, our impression here is that the Chinese government has issued a law which requires the Chinese companies to provide the data if they wish. Let me just say that this sort of works both ways. The United States intelligence agencies, of course, they may not take private data from Microsoft, but they do have lots of ways of trying to listen to Chinese conversations, just as China has many ways already of listening to American conversations. And so, you know, a TikTok access may not be a big change. And I'm not really even suggesting that China's behavior here is particularly unusual, in the sense that we know that most countries will try to use whatever information they can access. But in China, the difference is the law that now requires private companies to share data, combined with the general toughening of U.S. policy towards China under Trump. Those are the two things that I believe really drive this debate on TikTok.
Okay. Well, this law that you talked about, we also go and checked, and it talks about in cases of national security. I do not know whether that's exactly the clause you were talking about. I want to bring in our fourth guest before time goes out, Mr. Zhao Hai, Research Fellow at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Mr. Zhao, maybe you can help us dissect or understand the kind of legal requirement that Chinese companies are under from the Chinese government to provide private information. That seems to be the sticking point or the original sin of a lot of Chinese companies, whether they're private or public, because basically with such a clause, no Chinese company can go abroad because they would all be suspected, right, to collude, let's say, or infringe on the privacy of their users anywhere outside of China or even in China.
From the very beginning, this is wildly exaggerated by the Trump administration, particularly Secretary Pompeo. Pompeo used to really cite this particular clause in this law regularly to show to American people that they're in danger. Their data would be accessed by the Chinese government randomly and by any means, as long as the Chinese government has the will, they can access it. But that's not what the law says. The law says under very specific conditions, which is the threat of national security, that the Chinese government can enlist help from tech companies to provide particular data that can reveal the nature of this national security threat. So just like any other country, that China has this very similar law that help it to resolve national security problems. The U.S. has it, Great Britain, any other country, Australia. So I think to particularly figure out this law to ban Chinese companies working in Western countries, in particular the United States, it's really, I think, on the one hand, irrelevant, but also malicious intentioned. And the only way to do, and the only purpose of doing that is to help American business to have a unleveling competition field, so that the Chinese company, even though they're very innovative, having large population in the United States, a very popular software that they're using. They wanted to drive them out of the market. And secondly, the purpose is very much to use this ideology or value difference or the system difference between the United States and China to just see all the Chinese companies in one category and try to ban them out of the United States.
Yeah.
This is very much ideological.
All right, let me go to Mr. O'Hanlon. Basically, it seems like there's a paranoia, and based on this one law clause, which you know, probably every country would have, you know, to require companies to cooperate in matters that concerns national security. Mr. O'Hanlon, your reaction?
Well, my reaction is that this is part of the high-tech vigilance that we're seeing also in regard to 5G. It's the same kind of general concern.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's valid in this case. I have not yet concluded in my own mind whether I think the concern about TikTok is valid. Clearly, the Trump administration has decided that given the Chinese government's power to ask for data and information from its own companies, that having Chinese companies inside sort of the electronic and high-tech and cyber infrastructure and neural system of the United States is a problem. They don't want that. Their focus is on high-tech and especially on technology where you could imagine Chinese firms of the fabric of the American infrastructure, and therefore potentially having ways to reach out and affect that infrastructure. With 5G, it could be, you know, in a crisis in the future, China being able to change the way our phones work or something like that. So it gets to the issue of high technology and the electronic cyber infrastructure of the country. That's where the vigilance is greatest right now.
Okay. Let me give Ms. Kimberly another opportunity to speak here. What do you make of this kind of discussion? I mean, some of the concern is legitimate, I would say, and yet ultimately not every Chinese company is the, you know, the spying hand of the Chinese government. Not every Chinese company is out there to encroach on the liberty and freedom of another people. I mean, for me, that's just such a blanket statement. But Mr. Kimberly, your take.
Well, Americans, excuse me, Americans need to be concerned about how their information is used right here by, excuse me, by American businesses, by the U.S. government. Facebook and Twitter, they have all admitted they turn over our information to U.S. security agencies. I don't know why people are more worried about our information being in China when we don't know how it is used here. Well, actually, we do know. We know that Facebook has turned over our information. We know that the NSA has all of our information. So if people in this country are going to be concerned about how their data is used, they should start right here and not worry about what someone in China can do with their data. What can the Chinese government do with data about me? As far as I know, they can't do anything. But the U.S. government, which does have my information, can do quite a lot.
All right. I guess a lot of people will not agree there. But anyway, time running out. Thomas, 10 seconds maybe. You want to say something? Okay. Fine, next time. Okay. All right, thank you all so much for joining us during this very important discussion. Mr. Michael O'Hanlon joining us from the United States, Ms. Kimberly, Margaret Kimberly from D.C. We had on the phone Zhao Hai and Thomas Luo joining us from different parts of China. Thank you so much for having followed me on this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. You've got the point.